I'm Sabina Vaught, Director of the Kinloch Commons for Critical Pedagogy and Leadership at the University of Pittsburgh. Welcome to the Digital Freedom Leadership Project. This project consists of a series of brief conversations with leaders reflecting on one of their guiding principles. The project is designed as a resource to support educational leaders doing freedom work everywhere. Joining for a conversation about one of his leadership principles is Dr. Elon Dancy II. Dr. Dancy is Helen S. Faison Endowed Chair and Executive Director of the Center for Urban Education at the University of Pittsburgh. At Pitt, he's also served as Associate Dean for Equity and Justice and is co-principal investigator of the Pitt Ed Justice Collective. At the University of Oklahoma, Dr. Dancy served as the inaugural Associate Dean for Community Engagement and Academic Inclusion, which made him the first Black administrative leader in the College of Education's 93-year history. An internationally recognized scholar, Dr. Dancy's research has had an extraordinary impact on race, gender, and higher education. Elon, thank you for joining me today in conversation as part of the Digital Freedom Leadership Project.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be a part of this.
So we'll jump in with the first question, which is, what is one of your, and I know you have so many, guiding leadership principles, and if you'd share with people listening or watching kind of where it came from, how or with whom you learned it, kind of why this particular principle.
Yes, that's a great question. So I could start my response in many ways. I watch talks all the time that are within Black and Indigenous and Afro-Indigenous knowledges. And I remember once I was listening to a talk that Marimba Ani was a part of. And she once argued that knowledge should be internalized and useful for the collective. And I just never forgot that, the way that she put that knowledge should be internalized to be useful for the collective. And so I mapped that phrase onto leadership, that leadership is to be useful for the collective. So I think the principle that I love to talk about today is collective practices for collective purposes. Thinking about what does it mean, particularly for the many of us who are working within hierarchical environments, where our understandings of leadership or our expectations around leadership are highly individualized, what it means to practice collectively for collective purposes. And that principle has shown up to me across my readings, the thinkers and authors who have nurtured me in their writings, and certainly my relationships with you, the way you practice daily. It's so collective. You're probably the most collective thinker, collective practitioner, leader that I know. So you are a model for me daily. And this quote that I know that you love, that I also came to love when you introduced it to me, which is the Leanne Simpson quote about how we do things. So I feel that a collective praxis for leadership is central to how we do things, and that it is that how that changes us.
You're generous as ever. I love our working relationship. And I'm thinking, as you're talking about the ways in which you connected your own study, which is so often so highly individualized, with relationships and sort of bridging the enforced individualization of higher ed, hierarchical nature of higher ed, with this collective relational impulse. And am I getting that right?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
it's a struggle. It's a daily struggle.
it is a struggle. Oh, you do it beautifully though. So in that, are there examples or is there a story you want to share of trying to put that collectivism, the knowledge collectivism to work in leadership?
Yes, so it's just a really timely question, in that I have been engaged in probably weeks-long negotiation with a team that is supposed to be, I think, moving more collaboratively with us than they are. And we do have a history with the organization, but the ways that we work hardly includes a we in this. So these team members have a way of pursuing resources without us, but implicating us in the applications for those resources and tying us to expectations that have not been collaboratively designed. So um, in this particular case, this would bind the center to obligations that we would never agree to. And that has required me as a leader to make a decision, even though this would be collaborative partner has these resources and that they have implicated us to this. Something I have to think through is whether or not we actually should move forward just because someone that we think of as a collaborative partner has obligated us to do something. So I've been grappling quite a bit with how we have been obligated to do something. And this may, although I know I'm presenting this already in my conundrum, let me say that this has implications for masses of young children, particularly masses of young Black children learning. And so part of what I'm also negotiating, in addition to the how we're working together as colleagues and what it actually means to work together as colleagues, is also is this way of working so problematic that we will turn away from resources that could be used to support the learning of masses of young children. And so I think one way of reading that scenario is to say, even though there has been a mistake here, maybe you should just go ahead and take the money and do whatever they are obligating you to do, because at least you have this, or at least you have something. And what I find myself thinking is that, maybe something is not always better than nothing. I think that's I think having something is a kind of least measures thinking that we're also conditioned to be doing in the field. That maybe you have the least you could be doing is to be taking what is given to you. But uh, how we do things matters, and I find that that's not all. Maybe I should stop, Sabina. I need to get my. I need to organize my thinking. So I'm losing my.
No, I think this story is so like
I want to tell it differently.
beautifully layered in terms of the tension you get put in. If you really are collective, you have someone who's not being collective, binding you to things that are antithetical to your principles.
Yes.
And yet, I imagine you're there's worry or concern there, all these children. So how do you think about impact? But I love what you said about this least measure, like that there's this thrust to just do the least you can do, which becomes anti-collective potentially. Like
Yes.
one has to ask.
Yes.
So I'm appreciating the way you are telling the story about this. The way in which an effort to practice collective leadership is constantly kind of in this cauldron of extractive and individualistic relationships, and that's a real struggle.
Yes. And I'm sorry I ended the story there. I thought that I could, and that we would do another take, but we're still not gonna do another take.
We could do another take if you want, but this is great. I think you could keep going. I mean, it shows
Okay.
I think this helps leaders think about being in the midst of something not reconciled.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you for that. So, yeah, that is definitely part and parcel to the dilemma. Yes, because, and I just want to see if I can just articulate this point again, that often we say at least we have this, and I'm still thinking about, well, what is the this that we have? The how is a part of that, and then I'm also thinking through, well, what's the most we could do? And the most for us is that collective most, which we would have had if the process that could lead up to this collaboration, because again we have had a history with this organization, we could have easily avoided some of this. And so we actually were supposed to begin the project months ago, but we will not begin the project until we can get to agreement about these terms. And that is, I hope that it looks like a courageous leadership, that in some ways it's a pedagogy of courage, because I know that there's lots of money on the line. There are private funders who have invested, and because keep in mind, we're not co-primary investigators or anything, because we actually were not invited. We were drafted, you see. We were implicated into a decision that, when we look at what was promised, actually is not the way we worked at all. There are actually diminished, reduced incentives for students, for youth, in this model, which we would never agree to in this context. We could add incentives, but we cannot lessen them. Their pedagogical resources that we use completely eliminated from the grant. So the center would be obligated to actually sign off on a form of pedagogy that we would never do. And so thinking about whether or not this actually is meaningful, despite the millions of dollars that might be put into this kind of project, is it actually going to work to reproduce the same kinds of outcomes, the same kinds of pains and fractions that we're seeing daily? And do I want to participate in it? And the moment I sign off on an agreement is also the moment that we participate in it. And I just refuse to do it. And what I found out in this process is that when you commit to leadership that is collective for collective purposes, because I am trying to think through multiple collectives here, and also think through multiple relationalities around this agreement, what I've discovered about myself is that I do not work with all I can get.
I love that. And I'm hearing, you can't be conscripted into collaboration. Collaboration is of the willing and the reciprocal.
Yes.
Yeah. And that collectivism, one dimension of collectivism might be poking a stick in the wheel, like stopping something. So I think sometimes leaders feel like, well, to be collective, you just have to, like, everybody get along and do the thing together. But the thing might be to stop what's happening and to rewind and to do it right, to do it together.
That's right.
Yeah. And then to do it in alignment with other principles. So what I'm also loving is that you're talking about collectivism, but you're connecting to all these other leadership principles you have. And so that it's almost like a spoke.
Yes.
So I'm appreciating how people listening or viewing might be able to kind of create a constellation of principles around the primary principle of collectivism, and to I think you said, be courageous to act. You're acting within collective praxis. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Which reminds me of the Audre Lorde quote, when I give my strength and service to my vision, it matters less whether I'm afraid. Uh,
Mhm.
and that for me undergirds the importance of courage. And it holds true for me. So there's a vision here, and the vision is a collective
Yeah.
principle. And it's about the project at its core needs to um, support a pedagogy of liberation. So
Mm.
you have to learn, whatever it is, you have to learn in collective ways, and you have to learn in ways that are relevant to youth lives, and so that they can be thinking through ways to organize toward freedom,
Mm.
and thinking about ways to assess advancement toward a freedom struggle based on whether or not the conditions of their lives change.
Mm.
Um, and the project's kind of way of moving thus far, but I love the language that you use where we're being kind of conscripted into collaboration, is threatening
Mm.
that goal.
Mm.
And so that's where I have dug my heels in.
Mm.
And it's and it's a clear willingness to walk away. One that I actually don't feel bound to at all, as we're not uh, we're not collaborative. It wasn't collaboratively designed. We're not listed as a co-PI. So it's actually very easy for me to say, well, you made these promises for us without us.
Mhm.
It's very easy to walk away. And I
Mm.
think, within institutions, though, that may love to have the money that may come from, whatever contract or whatever grant, there also has to be and that's why you have to have some principles. Otherwise, you'll fall for anything. You just always take the money.
Yeah.
Um, but in a context that is, a racial capitalist one, I mean, we're really having to think through. I mean, there's a critique about money exchange generally, daily anyway, but in particular, we don't want to participate in what we clearly see as
Mm.
dirty money exchange. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for this. Thank you for sharing your principle and for sharing a story that's as of yet unfinished. I think that's so helpful for people who are also themselves in the midst of struggle, that there's not resolution yet in this story. So I'm so grateful for our dialogue today and for your generosity in sharing with everyone.
Thank you. I hope it's helpful.
Absolutely.